left to right, up or down or anything like that when I paint. I probably should, but I don't. I sort of just like to work where I feel comfortable. Okay, and we're not going to go too into detail with all these spots just yet. We really just want to get the main colours of the pear down. It could be a bit lighter. And as we just sort of rub these colours over top of what we've already put down, actually you can see the value study that we've done starting to show through our work. Depending on what kind of strokes you make will depend on style of your painting. I like to go in little circles like this, as if I'm rubbing in some makeup to try and smooth it out on my face. Other little marks I make are just very small little up and down motions, just as if I'm feathering something out, and then I'll move down and feather it out, and then later on sometimes I come across with a big brush and just take one big stroke over the top. I'm starting to add a little bit of white. Not too much, just a little bit. And when I blend, I want to get that white off my brush and make some marks that blend. Just going to add more yellow ochre here. I'm finding this side of the pear far too dark. So I'm grabbing some more yellow ochre, a warmer version with a little bit of burnt sienna mixed in, and I'm just going to push those lower value colours away. I'm not loving them. I want a little bit of crimson in my yellow ochre. I want to warm it up. And add a little bit more white. I'm really hoping for a bit of a pinky tinge to this white. There we go. Now these oils won't dry for a few days, hopefully, at least. Oh yes, I was in the middle of explaining before the problem when you don't use oils, these linseed oils. Not that long ago, I had in my head that if I added more oil, it was going to take longer to dry. And I'd gone and done a painting that the following week needed to be dry for a getting printed. But what I didn't realise was that the linseed oil helps the paints cure and dry. So I'd gone and put straight oil paint on a painting. I did the entire background of the painting. And 6 months later, it's still not dry. No joke. I've learnt the hard way. So yes, I highly recommend using a bit of linseed oil on your brush and making sure that your paints are feeling that linseed oil, because if you don't, you're going to end up in strife like me. You can have a wet painting on your walls for months and months on end. Alright, so here I've just sort of created a sort of an orangey warmer colour, because I find this is a bit green, and I wanted it green at the top, but I'm wanting it warmer just around this section here until we move into the cooler colours. I'm going to add a bit more crimson. That crimson's great, this particular one. Elzarian. It's very transparent. It's not too bold. It does a good job of warming things up without being noticed, which is what we want. You don't look at the colour and think, oh boy, that's very crimson. It just sort of hides away, which is great, while giving a lovely warm feeling to the colour that we made. Now I want to stretch out this light because I believe the light is curving around the pear. So I really want to push that low value away as much as possible, just in this area here. Remember, you don't have to constantly blend. You can put your colour down and blend later. A lot of people do that actually. They put all their colours on their canvas first. It's like a really crazy abstract painting. And then they go and add their blending later. I love it. I love watching those videos. Right, remember that it lowers in value as we get darker. So I've just put a little bit of blue, ultramarine blue, on my tip of my brush as I've started to blend these warmer colours through. So how are you guys going for work? Are you all working still? A few of you working from home, I believe. There's a number of you who aren't able to work at the moment. I actually had 3 commissions lined up. Of course, they all cancelled. And I had 6 markets. And also, I had a couple of live painting shows planned. So yeah, so I've had all my work either bumped out or cancelled, and I want to say I'm really sad about that because just not having the income's a little bit tricky, but. To be honest, I'm actually quite happy to have the break. Worked pretty hard last year, and I've been wanting to do these workshops for such a long time. I'm really glad I can share some of this with you guys. So I know for everyone it's a real hit in the pocket, but in other terms it's also kind of a little bit of respite. But I know that it's not all fun and games. Carl was made redundant. When was it? More than a year ago, I think now. It was the November before last, and he'd been looking forward to it for so long because he knew it was coming up. He was so excited to get made redundant and have some time off. But the reality was that as soon as his job finished, it was job hunting and resumes and worrying about, how long it was going to take and what we should and shouldn't be spending. And it was tricky. It's a tricky thing to manage. And I know myself, I've been out of work at times where I really needed work. And it's not easy. But as much as you can, try and balance doing things you need to do between also looking after yourself. Because the fact is we're always out of time. We always never have enough time for things. And most certainly not when you're working and you can earn money for it. We suddenly have no time at all. So while you can't work, if you're not able to, do something for yourself that you've always wanted to do. If you can. Don't forget to, every now and again, just try and take some of the paint out of your brush. You can do that by dipping it in the linseed oil, giving it a bit of a clean. The linseed oil in the end will become tainted with all the colours that you've been using. It'll actually become more neutral in itself. And I found that at times I'm able to actually use that to my advantage and tone down a colour that got too bright or something like that later on. I'm still finding this too bright for my liking. Sorry, not too bright, too cool for my liking. So I'm just going to mix a little bit of crimson with a little bit of burnt sienna. I'm actually just going to chuck it on here. And I know now you can see an ugly bright red line, but I'm going to start blending. Oops, I should wipe my brush before I did that. Oh dear, that's not very good. I'll have to fix that. The nerve-wracking thing about doing this is that all your mistakes are live on television. That's okay. Okay, so I've just warmed that up a little bit. I'm a bit worried now that it's not going to flow, so I'm going to grab a bit more of that, so that greeny, yellowy colour, and just try and show that that's a bit of light change right there. Finding as it gets lighter, it also gets warmer. So I want a bit more of a pinky tinge to my white. Remember what we said about light too, that when you put a light in a dark room, the light takes away the darkness, but you can't put darkness in to take away light necessarily. So, oh, here we go, I think the sneeze is coming. No, it's not coming. Oh, it's the worst. Oh, excuse me, there we go. Finally. It's tormenting me all morning. Right. And you can actually use colour to slowly blend out that light tone. So don't go overboard with your white. You can always add more and you can build up the layers as we go. So you can see I'm using my yellow ochre now for blending in these lower value to these higher value areas. And you can tell if you're putting the right colours on by looking at the relationship between colour on your brush and the colour next to it. And that will tell you whether you need to make something lighter or darker or warmer or cooler. If you put a stroke down, I'll give you an example. If I put a stroke there, does that work? Why does it not work? Because the value's too low and the temperature's too low. In other words, it's too dark and it's too blue, and it doesn't work when we're trying to lighten something here and you have a light colour there. Don't panic if you just realise that you've just put the wrong colour in the wrong place. You can remove it with a dry brush or a bit of paper towel, or you can do that. But just remember, it'll stay on your hand wet for a very long time. Everything you touch will then have a mark on it. So obviously we need a lighter colour here, not a darker colour. And so while I want it lighter, I also want it warmer. So I'm going to add more burnt sienna because burnt sienna is very good for very subtly warming up things. Yes, so when Robin Ely said in his course recently that he goes from dark to light, I was so relieved because all the paintings I've ever worked on that have worked out, that was the order I worked on them in. The ones that didn't work out, in my opinion, were all the ones I did where I listened to some of my past teachers who said, always work from light to dark. You never want to add much black. You never want to add much dark. You always focus on the light. Problem with that, like I said yesterday, was the light is very saturating. And once the light's on, it's on. Okay, I've got too much white in that shadow there, so I'm going to grab some of this made up burnt sienna just because it's a little redder than the other burnt sienna and it's also closer to neutral. Okay, and now I'm going to blend that in. I'm going around in a circle because it's following the natural shape of the pear.